Welcome to the Prescott Lab Podcast, not just theory, practical science for everyone. I'm Dr. Jonathan Prescott, a physician and integrative medicine researcher at the Ravenshade Institute for Human Health. Gentlemen, before we begin, let me say this. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. And if you find value in what we share today, hit that like button. Not for me, for you, and for every man who deserves to age with strength. Every single like is the fuel that keeps us bringing you more of these conversations, the kind that can change how you feel, move, and live. Now imagine this with me. It's late evening, the house is quiet. Outside the air is cool, carrying that faint scent of autumn leaves. You step into the bathroom, the light soft and golden. But as you stand there, you realize you're here again, for the third time tonight. The stream is weaker, the relief incomplete, you sigh, knowing it will happen again before morning. For too many men, this is the silent rhythm of life after 60, and it chips away at your nights, your energy, your freedom. But here's the truth most don't hear: it doesn't have to stay that way. There are small, powerful changes you can make, starting right now, to ease that nightly battle and protect your prostate for the years ahead. And today, I'm going to give you one of those changes first, a simple, almost effortless habit that takes less than a minute, costs you nothing, and yet can make a real difference in how you feel day and night. You've probably never heard it from your doctor before, but once you do, you'll wonder why no one told you sooner. So let's start there. 1. The simple daily habit most men miss. Gentlemen, in over 3 decades of seeing patients, I've learned that it's not always the big, complicated interventions that save the day. Sometimes it's the smallest, most ordinary habits, the ones hiding in plain sight, that quietly change everything. One of those habits begins in a place so routine, so unremarkable, most men never think twice about it: the moment you finish urinating. Now, let me explain why this matters. As we age, the muscles and nerves that help your bladder contract lose a touch of their strength. If your prostate is enlarged, even slightly, the narrow passage through the urethra makes it harder for urine to pass freely. The result: you can walk away from the bathroom thinking you're done, when in reality a small pool of urine remains, and that leftover is no small thing. Over time, it becomes a breeding ground for urinary tract infections, bladder strain, and worsening BPH symptoms. Here's the simple shift I teach every man who walks into my office. Once you think you're finished, take another 20 to 30 seconds. Relax, breathe, let gravity and patience do their work. Don't push, don't strain, just wait. Feel the last few drops leave. That extra half minute is like closing the door on trouble before it can walk into your life. Some men benefit from adjusting their position slightly. Leaning forward while seated can help the bladder empty more completely. It's not dramatic, not flashy, but it works. I remember a man named Victor Hanley, 68 years old, who came to me worn out from waking 3 or 4 times every night. He thought surgery was inevitable. But after reviewing his habits, I found his bladder was never truly empty. We tried this extra 30-second pause. Within weeks, he was waking only once per night. No pills, no scalpels, just awareness and time. He told me, "Doc, I didn't believe something so small could give me my nights back, but it has." Science backs him up. Studies have shown that residual urine, even as little as 50 milliliters, increases the risk of infection and can worsen urgency and frequency. By taking those extra seconds, you help prevent that residual buildup, reduce strain on the bladder, and protect long-term urinary health. And here's a counterintuitive point: drinking less water to avoid frequent trips is a trap. Concentrated urine irritates the bladder, making symptoms worse, not better. Your goal is pale yellow urine, which means steady hydration paired with complete emptying. This is the kind of habit that costs nothing, takes no equipment, and is entirely within your control. It's the quiet work of prevention, the sort of thing you start today and forget you're even doing, until one day you realize your nights are uninterrupted, your days are freer, and you feel more in command of your body again. And once you've mastered this simple change, it's time to understand the deeper forces at play, the anatomy and chemistry inside you that decide whether your prostate stays silent or starts speaking louder with every passing year. 2. Understanding the prostate and why enlargement happens. Gentlemen, the prostate is a strange kind of companion. For most of your life, you barely notice it's there, quiet, loyal, doing its job without complaint. But the day it decides to make itself known, it can change everything. Picture it: a small walnut-sized gland tucked neatly just below your bladder, wrapped around the urethra like a ring around a tree trunk. Its job: to produce seminal fluid, the nutrient-rich solution that nourishes and carries sperm. That's its purpose. That's its design, and for decades it works in silence. The trouble begins with time and the subtle shifts that age brings. Testosterone, the hormone that fuels so much of a man's vitality, begins to decline. But another form of it, dihydrotestosterone or DHT, lingers and builds inside the prostate. Think of DHT as a foreman who never clocks out, constantly signaling the gland cells to grow, even when there's no more room to expand. At first you don't feel it, but millimeter by millimeter that extra tissue begins to press on the urethra, narrowing the passageway where urine should flow freely. A strong, steady stream becomes weaker. Starting can take effort, and even when you're done, you're not really done. For many men, the nights become broken into 2, 3, even 4 trips to the bathroom. I once treated Raymond Cole, a 58-year-old whose main complaint wasn't pain, it was exhaustion. "Doc," he said, "I'm not sick, but I'm tired in a way that sleep can't fix." His problem wasn't just the trips to the bathroom, it was the way they stole from his deep, restorative sleep night after night. Once we addressed the underlying prostate growth, his energy, focus, and mood all began to return. Here's what the research shows. While age is the biggest single risk factor, it's far from the only one. I've seen men in their late 70s with perfectly healthy prostates and men in their 50s with significant enlargement. The difference often lies in the surrounding terrain, weight, diet, activity level, medications, even silent inflammation driven by high blood sugar or elevated blood pressure. Genetics can tilt the odds. If your father or brother had BPH, your risk rises sharply, but it's not destiny. I've had patients with strong family histories stay symptom-free into their 80s simply because they treated their bodies like something worth preserving. Chronic low-grade inflammation, the kind that simmers quietly in the background, can make the prostate more sensitive to hormonal shifts. Conditions like metabolic syndrome create a biochemical environment where growth signals hit harder and linger longer. That's why I don't just look at PSA scores or palpation results. I ask about your habits, your meals, your stress, your movement. Because the prostate doesn't live in isolation, it's part of the whole ecosystem of your health. And here's the good news. When you understand that ecosystem, you stop being a passenger. You start being the driver. Your choices, daily, ordinary, seemingly insignificant, either feed the problem or keep it at bay. And once you know what you're up against, the next step is knowing exactly where your vulnerabilities lie. The hidden factors that may be quietly pushing your prostate toward trouble without you even realizing it. 3. Know your risk factors. Gentlemen, knowing your risk factors is like having a weather forecast for your health. You can't stop the seasons from changing, but you can prepare for the storms. When I meet a man for the first time, one of my earliest questions is simple. Has anyone in your family ever had prostate problems? You'd be surprised how many pause, tilt their head and say, "Well, my dad did, and come to think of it, my older brother too." That pause matters. Because family history can raise your odds, sometimes up to 4 times higher if your father or brother had BPH. And if they faced symptoms early, the risk tends to come knocking sooner. I remember Thomas Beck, 62, who came to me frustrated with waking 3 times a night. He thought it was just getting older. But when he mentioned his father had prostate surgery at 64, the picture became clearer. We began screening him more closely and adjusted his lifestyle immediately. Within months, his symptoms stopped worsening, a different outcome than his father's, simply because we acted early. Your DNA can tilt the playing field. Some men, like African-American patients I've treated, often develop prostate issues earlier and more aggressively, a mix of genetics and environment. This isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to arm you. When you know the terrain, you navigate smarter. But genetics aren't the whole story. The other half is written by your choices. Metabolic syndrome, the trio of obesity, high blood pressure, and type 2 diabetes, creates an inflammatory environment where the prostate is far more likely to grow. Elevated blood sugar doesn't just tire you out, it damages delicate tissues over time, including those in the prostate. Extra body fat shifts your hormone balance, raising DHT and sending stronger growth signals to the gland. I've seen men walk into my office resigned to surgery, only to find that losing a modest amount of weight, improving their diet, and getting blood pressure under control made their nights quieter and their days freer. These aren't miracles. They're the result of removing fuel from the fire. And sometimes it's the smallest daily patterns, sitting for hours without moving, eating processed foods out of convenience, and letting stress simmer, that quietly set the stage for trouble. The point is this: Once you see your vulnerabilities, you can do something about them. Because the moment you know where the cracks are, you can strengthen the foundation. And one of the most powerful tools for reinforcing that foundation begins not in a pill bottle or a doctor's office, but right on your plate. 4. Eat to protect your prostate. Gentlemen, I've noticed something remarkable over the decades. The men who seem to age with quiet strength, who sleep through the night, travel without scouting for the nearest restroom, and keep their energy steady, they almost always have one thing in common: the way they eat. And no, it's not about starving yourself or swearing off every food you enjoy. It's about choosing foods that quietly work for you meal after meal, year after year. One of the most powerful patterns I recommend is the Mediterranean-style approach. Picture a table covered in colors: deep red tomatoes, emerald green spinach, golden olive oil, grilled fish drizzled with lemon. This way of eating fights inflammation at its roots, and that low-grade, silent inflammation is one of the forces that can push your prostate toward enlargement. Let's talk about the heavy hitters. Tomatoes, rich in lycopene, a potent antioxidant proven in multiple studies to lower the risk of prostate issues. The magic: lycopene is more bioavailable when tomatoes are cooked, like in a slow-simmered pasta sauce or a bowl of tomato soup. Then there are the cruciferous vegetables: broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, armed with compounds that help detoxify harmful substances and protect the health of your cells. On the other side of the ledger, certain foods work against you. Diets heavy in saturated fats, red and processed meats, and full-fat dairy can stir up inflammation and upset hormone balance. I've had patients simply swap 2 or 3 red meat dinners a week for fish or plant-based proteins, and within months they noticed fewer urinary symptoms and better energy. I think of Alan Pierce, 74, who used to joke that vegetables were garnish, not food. When he came to me, he was on track for prostate surgery within a year. We overhauled his meals: more greens, fewer processed foods, olive oil replacing butter. 6 months later, his PSA stabilized, his symptoms eased, and his wife told me she'd never seen him so energetic. The science is clear: antioxidants from colorful fruits and vegetables protect cells from oxidative damage. Omega-3s from walnuts, flax seeds, and fatty fish help lower inflammation. Even something as simple as green tea, rich in catechins, supports prostate health. It doesn't happen overnight, but those small, consistent changes act like daily investments. The kind that quietly compound, protecting not just your prostate, but your heart, metabolism, and brain. And when you pair the right foods with another key factor that keeps hormones balanced, circulation flowing, and inflammation low, you create a synergy that no supplement alone can match. 5. Keep your body moving. Gentlemen, your body was never designed to be still for long. Every joint, every muscle, every vessel in you was built for motion. And when you stop moving, things stop moving inside you too. Blood slows, circulation weakens, inflammation lingers, and your prostate feels every bit of it. The science is clear. Regular physical activity lowers inflammation, improves pelvic circulation, and supports healthy hormone balance. 3 pillars of prostate protection. You don't need to train like an athlete or spend hours at a gym. In fact, some of the most powerful medicine for your prostate is as simple as lacing up your shoes and walking. 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, that's all it takes. A brisk walk is enough to get your heart pumping, your muscles warm, your blood delivering oxygen and nutrients to every corner, including the delicate tissues around your bladder and prostate. Studies have shown that men who walk regularly report fewer urinary symptoms, better sleep, and greater overall vitality. I think of Victor Hanley, 68, a man who came to me worn down from 3 nightly bathroom trips. He laughed when I suggested starting with a 10-minute walk after breakfast. "Doc, I'm not an exercise guy," he told me, but he agreed to try. Weeks later, he was walking 45 minutes a day. Months later, he was sleeping through most nights, his blood pressure had dropped, and his PSA had stabilized. His only regret: not starting sooner. And movement doesn't have to be solitary or boring. I've seen patients take up swimming, light cycling, gardening, even dancing with their spouses. The activity matters less than the consistency. Motion is the oil in your body's engine. Without it, parts start to grind. With it, everything runs smoother. Here's the caution: more isn't always better. Overtraining can raise inflammation and work against you. What we want is a steady rhythm, activity you can sustain for years, not weeks. Even small changes, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, parking farther away, standing and stretching every hour, keep the system primed. Exercise supports not just the mechanics of urination, but the deeper metabolic health that shapes your prostate's future. Lower blood sugar, better weight control, stronger cardiovascular health, these are the hidden dividends of staying active. But even when you're moving, there's a quiet saboteur that can undo the good you're building. One that often hides right inside your medicine cabinet. 6. Watch out for medication traps. Gentlemen, I've lost count of how many times I've seen this. A man comes into my office frustrated. He's eating right, moving daily, keeping his weight in check, yet his nights are still broken by trip after trip to the bathroom. He's convinced his prostate is getting worse. But when I dig deeper, the culprit is often hiding in plain sight, sitting quietly in his medicine cabinet. Some of the most common medications can quietly tighten the muscles around your urethra or interfere with the bladder's signals, making it harder for urine to flow. Take antihistamines, for example, the kind many of you use for seasonal allergies. They work by blocking histamine receptors to calm symptoms, but they also tighten smooth muscle in the urinary tract. If your prostate is already a little enlarged, that extra tension can turn a manageable trickle into a constant struggle. Decongestants, often found in cold medicines, create a similar problem. They constrict blood vessels to clear your sinuses, but they can also constrict the muscles in your bladder neck. And then there are tricyclic antidepressants, sometimes prescribed for mood disorders or chronic pain, which can overly relax the bladder muscles or disrupt nerve signals, leading to incomplete emptying. I recall Raymond Cole, 58, who was ready to schedule prostate surgery. His symptoms had worsened over the past year: weaker stream, constant urgency, restless nights. But when we reviewed his medications, I saw he'd started a daily allergy pill about the same time his symptoms began. We worked with his primary care physician to switch to an alternative that wouldn't impact urinary function. Within weeks, his nights improved so dramatically he canceled the surgery. Now, to be clear, I'm not telling you to stop taking your medications. Some are essential for heart health, blood pressure, or other serious conditions. But every man should have a complete, up-to-date list of prescriptions, over-the-counter drugs, and supplements to share with his doctors. This allows your healthcare team to see the full picture and adjust when needed. Think of your health like a house you're building. Nutrition, movement, and stress management are the bricks and beams. But if a medication is silently undermining your urinary function, it's like a leak in the roof you can't see. Left alone, it will cause damage no matter how solid the foundation. And that's why there's another step I urge every man to take, one that doesn't rely on symptoms to tell you something's wrong, but instead catches trouble early, before it can rewrite your quality of life. 7. Get checked before problems start. Gentlemen, waiting for symptoms to show before seeing a doctor is like waiting for smoke to fill the room before you check if the stove is on fire. By the time you notice the signs, the weaker stream, the extra trips to the bathroom, the restless nights, your prostate may already have grown enough to limit your options. I've seen both sides of this story. There are men who come to me only after months, sometimes years, of frustration. They've adapted to the discomfort, told themselves it's just part of aging, and by the time they finally walk through my door, the problem has momentum. Treatment is still possible, but the road back is longer. And then there are the men who treat checkups like insurance for their quality of life. They come in when they feel fine. They run the tests, get the exams, and go home with either peace of mind or an early warning. The difference in their outcomes is night and day. Take Thomas Beck, 62. He came in for a routine annual checkup. No symptoms, no complaints. His PSA was slightly above his usual baseline. An ultrasound showed mild enlargement, nothing urgent, but enough to warrant changes in diet, exercise, and hydration. A year later, his PSA had dropped back to normal and his prostate size had stabilized. Without that visit, those changes wouldn't have happened until the symptoms forced his hand. The standard tools are simple yet powerful. PSA blood test measures prostate-specific antigen, a marker that can signal changes in the gland. Digital rectal exam Quick Direct gives me valuable information about the size and texture of the prostate. Ultrasound imaging, painless, precise, lets us see changes before they can be felt or cause symptoms. For most men, I recommend starting regular screenings at age 50 earlier if you have risk factors like family history or are African American. These visits are not about fear, they are about control. They give us the chance to act when the problem is still small enough to respond to lifestyle changes, mild medications, or watchful monitoring. I know some men avoid these appointments out of embarrassment or because they are afraid of what they might find. But in my years of practice, I've found that most of the time the news is good. And when it isn't, early detection almost always means a gentler, more successful treatment. Gentlemen, your health is not fixed in place. Hormones shift, weight changes, other conditions arise. Staying connected to your urologist allows your prevention plan to adapt with you. Because while regular checkups are vital, there's also a simple daily action, something you can do yourself without appointments or prescriptions, that can help protect your prostate function every single day. 8. Conclusion. Gentlemen, after years in the clinic, I can tell you this. The men who age with confidence, comfort, and strength are not the ones who simply get lucky. They're the ones who take an active role in their own health, who decide that quality of life is worth the daily effort. We've talked about it all today, understanding how your prostate works, spotting your personal risk factors, nourishing your body with the right foods, keeping it in motion, avoiding the silent traps in your medicine cabinet, getting checked before problems grow, and practicing the small, simple habits that protect you day after day. These aren't abstract theories. They're practical steps I've seen change lives, men who now sleep through the night, travel without worry, and live without the constant interruption of the bathroom door. And here's the truth, your health is your story to write. Every walk you take, every plate you fill, every appointment you keep, these are the sentences that make up that story. You don't need to change everything overnight. Start with one choice today, let it build. Over weeks and months, you'll look back and realize you've built something strong, something lasting. Now, before we close, let me say this, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do it now. And if you forgot to hit like earlier, tap it now, not for me, but because every like tells me you value these conversations, and it gives us the drive to bring you more of them. Share this with a friend or brother who might need it. You could be giving them the knowledge that changes their future. I read every comment and I'd love to hear from you. Tell me your questions, your experiences, or just say, I'm taking charge. It tells me you're out there listening and ready to make the most of the years ahead. Gentlemen, thank you for spending this time with me. I wish you strength, health, and many uninterrupted nights ahead. Until next time, take care of yourself and take control of your story.